The Stranger Who Knew Too Much. Part 1, The Encounter. The Woman Who Wrote Truth. Elena Costa had ink stains on her fingers and coffee stains on her soul. At 26, she worked for the City Chronicle, a small newspaper that nobody read unless they wanted to check obituaries or yard sale listings. Her desk sat in the corner of a cramped office that smelled like old paper and broken dreams. But Elena refused to give up. Every morning, she arrived early. Every night, she stayed late. She chased stories that bigger journalists ignored. She wrote about small injustices that made her heart burn with anger. Today, she typed furiously on her old laptop. Her latest article exposed a landlord who cheated elderly tenants. It wasn't glamorous work, but it mattered. At least, that's what she told herself when doubt crept in during lonely evenings. The cafe where everything changed. Elena's favorite escape was the Corner Cafe, a small place 3 blocks from her office. The owner, Mrs. Chen, knew her order by heart: black coffee, no sugar, and whatever pastry looked least sad that day. The cafe had wooden tables scarred with years of use. Mismatched chairs that creaked when you sat down. Windows that fogged up when it rained. It felt real in a way that most places didn't anymore. For the past 2 months, Elena noticed someone else who came regularly. A man who sat by the window, always alone, always reading. He dressed too well for this neighborhood: expensive suits, polished shoes, a watch that probably cost more than her car. But what caught her attention was this: he read her articles. She saw him with the Chronicle spread on his table, his finger tracing her byline. Once, she even saw him smile at something she'd written about a community garden project. Elena told herself she wasn't interested. She had no time for distractions, especially not handsome strangers with mysterious eyes and perfect posture. But she noticed him anyway. The approach. It happened on a Tuesday, gray and drizzling. Elena sat at her usual table, editing an article on her laptop. The cafe was nearly empty except for Mrs. Chen and the stranger by the window. Your piece on the textile factory closure was brilliant. Elena looked up, startled. The stranger stood beside her table, holding his coffee cup. Up close, he was even more striking: dark hair with threads of silver at the temples, sharp cheekbones, eyes so blue they seemed unreal. "Excuse me," she managed. "The article you wrote last week." He gestured to the empty chair. "May I?" She should have said no. Should have told him she was busy. Instead, she nodded. He sat down with the grace of someone who'd never felt awkward in his life. "You connected the factory closing to the city council's rezoning decision. Most journalists missed that link. You read my work?" Elena tried to keep her voice steady. Every word. His smile was slight, mysterious. "You have a talent for seeing patterns others ignore." "Who are you?" "Someone who appreciates good journalism." He extended his hand. "Adrian." Elena shook his hand. His grip was firm, warm. "Just Adrian?" "For now." His eyes held hers. "Tell me, Elena, may I call you Elena, why does a journalist of your caliber work at the Chronicle?" "How do you know my name?" "Your byline." He tapped the newspaper folded beside him. "Elena Costa. You write like someone who believes words can change the world." Heat rose to her cheeks. "I write about things that matter." "Yes, you do." He leaned forward slightly. "Which is why I need to warn you." The warning that changed everything. The air between them shifted. Elena's journalist instincts kicked in: something was happening here, something important. "Warn me about what?" Adrian glanced around the cafe, then back to her. "Your recent investigation into Thornfield Properties. The housing development scandal." Elena's pulse quickened. "How do you know about that?" "I haven't published anything yet." "I know because people are watching you." His voice dropped lower. "People who don't want that story told." "Are you threatening me?" "I'm trying to protect you." His intensity was almost frightening. You're digging into something bigger than you realize. Thornfield isn't just a corrupt property developer. They're connected to one of the most powerful families in this city. Which family? He hesitated, something like pain crossing his face. The Morettis. The name sent a chill through her. Everyone knew the Moretti family, old money, political connections, a business empire that touched everything from real estate to manufacturing. They were the kind of people who appeared in society pages, not crime reports. What do the Morettis have to do with Thornfield? Everything. Adrian stood abruptly. Be careful, Elena. Don't publish anything without verifying every detail. And don't trust anyone who offers to help you. Including you? He smiled sadly. Especially me. Then he walked out, leaving Elena sitting alone with her cold coffee and 100 burning questions. The assignment. The next morning, Elena's editor called her into his office. Harold Martinez was 63, perpetually tired, and smelled like cigars he claimed he'd quit smoking years ago. I'm giving you a real story, he said, sliding a folder across his desk. Elena opened it, her heart racing. Inside were clippings, notes, financial documents. What is this? Moretti Industries. There are rumors, just whispers, mind you, of financial irregularities. Money moving in strange ways. Contracts awarded under suspicious circumstances. Harold leaned back in his creaking chair. I want you to investigate. Me? Elena couldn't believe it. Harold, this is huge. Shouldn't you give this to Marcus or? Marcus is lazy. You're hungry. He pointed at her. You've been chasing scraps for 2 years. This is your chance to prove you belong at a real newspaper. Make this story bulletproof, and I'll recommend you to the Tribune. Elena clutched the folder. The Tribune was the big league, the dream she'd stopped letting herself dream. How long do I have? 6 weeks. And Elena? Harold's expression grew serious. Be smart. The Morettis are powerful. Don't make accusations you can't back up. She walked back to her desk in a daze. This was everything she'd wanted. So why did Adrian's warning echo in her mind like an alarm bell? The research begins. Elena threw herself into research. She spent days in the public records office, combing through property transfers and business filings. Nights, she analyzed financial statements until her eyes blurred. The Moretti empire was vast and complicated. Hotels, construction, import-export businesses. Giovanni Moretti, the patriarch, had built it from nothing 50 years ago. Now his sons ran different divisions. Luca handled real estate, Marco oversaw manufacturing, and Adrian. Elena stopped, her finger frozen on the computer screen. Adrian Moretti. Age 33. Harvard Business School. Currently head of corporate development for Moretti Industries. Her cafe stranger. The man who'd warned her. Her hands shook as she clicked through images. There he was in a tuxedo at a charity gala. Standing beside his father at a ribbon-cutting ceremony. Shaking hands with the mayor. Elena felt like she'd been punched in the stomach. He'd known exactly who she was. What she was investigating. And he'd approached her deliberately. The confrontation. She found him at the cafe 3 days later, sitting in his usual spot as if nothing had happened. Elena marched straight to his table and slammed her laptop bag down. You lied to me. Adrian looked up calmly. I told you not to trust anyone who offered help. You're Adrian Moretti. Her voice shook with anger. You knew I was investigating your family, and you came to me with some kind of cryptic warning. Why? Sit down, Elena. Don't tell me what to do. Please. Something in his voice made her pause. Sit down, and I'll explain everything. Against her better judgment, she sat. Adrian set down his coffee cup. You're right. I approached you deliberately. I've been reading your work for months, watching you chase stories everyone else ignores. When I learned you'd been assigned to investigate my family, I knew I had to meet you. To intimidate me? To find out what I know? To help you. His blue eyes held hers. My family's business practices aren't just unethical, Elena. They're criminal. And I want to help you expose them. Elena laughed bitterly. Right. You want to destroy your own family's empire. Yes. The single word carried weight. My father built this company on the backs of people who had no power to fight back. He's corrupted city officials, exploited workers, destroyed lives. And my brothers? He paused. They're even worse. Why should I believe you? Adrian reached into his jacket and pulled out a small USB drive. Because I'm giving you this. What is it? Financial records my father thought he'd destroyed. Proof of bribery, fraud, illegal campaign contributions. Everything you need to write your story. He placed it on the table between them. But it comes with a condition. Here it comes, Elena thought. The trap. What condition? Let me help you. Let me explain the documents, introduce you to people who'll verify the information. In exchange. He hesitated. Spend time with me. Have coffee. Talk. Let me know you. You want me to date you? Elena couldn't believe what she was hearing. I want a chance to show you I'm not like them. His voice held something raw, almost desperate. I know how this looks. I know you think this is manipulation. But Elena, I've been trapped in this family my whole life, watching them hurt people, being complicit through my silence. You're the first person I've met who might actually be able to stop them. Elena stared at the USB drive. Everything she needed, right there. Or everything she needed to walk into a trap. How do I know this isn't fake? That you're not setting me up? You verify everything independently. Adrian leaned forward. Use the USB as a roadmap, but confirm every detail yourself. If I'm lying, you'll discover it. And if I'm telling the truth, then why? Elena demanded. Why betray your own family? The pain that crossed his face was real, she was certain of it. Because 10 years ago, my mother tried to expose my father's corruption. She went to the authorities, tried to testify. His voice grew quiet. He had her declared mentally unfit, institutionalized her, took away everything she loved. She died in that facility 3 years later, alone and broken. Elena's breath caught. I was 23. Too young to understand what was happening, too scared to stand up to him. Adrian's hands clenched into fists. I've lived with that guilt every day since. I won't stand by anymore, Elena. I can't. The silence stretched between them. Elena's mind raced, weighing risks, calculating angles, trying to separate truth from manipulation. I need to think about this. Take your time. Adrian stood, leaving the USB drive on the table. But Elena? Whether you work with me or not, be careful. My family doesn't tolerate threats. And you, with your determination and your brilliant mind and your refusal to be intimidated, you're the biggest threat they've faced in years. He walked to the door, then paused. For what it's worth, I meant what I said before. You write like someone who believes words can change the world. I hope you never lose that. Then he was gone, and Elena was left alone with a USB drive that could either make her career or destroy her life. The decision. That night, Elena sat in her tiny apartment, staring at the USB drive. Rain pattered against her window. The city lights blurred beyond the glass. She thought about her mother, who'd worked 3 jobs to put her through college. About the promises she'd made to herself to make a difference, to tell stories that mattered. About Adrian Moretti, with his sad eyes and his dangerous offer. Elena plugged in the USB drive. Files opened across her screen, spreadsheets, emails, scanned documents. Her hands began to shake as she realized what she was looking at. Payments to city officials. Shell companies hiding money transfers. Contracts for buildings never constructed. It was all real. Either Adrian was telling the truth, or this was the most elaborate trap ever set. Elena grabbed her phone and typed a message, "I'll work with you. But I verify everything. And if you're lying to me, I'll destroy you along with the rest of your family." His response came within seconds, "I wouldn't expect anything less. Meet me tomorrow. Same cafe. I'll tell you everything." Elena set down her phone and returned to the documents. Outside, the rain fell harder, washing the city clean. Or maybe just washing away the line between right and wrong, leaving everything gray and uncertain. She had 6 weeks to write the story of her life. And 6 weeks to figure out if Adrian Moretti was her greatest ally or her most dangerous enemy. Either way, there was no turning back now. Part 2, The Game. The partnership begins. Elena arrived at the cafe early, nerves making her hands shake. She'd barely slept, her mind spinning with possibilities and dangers. The documents on the USB were explosive, if they were real. Adrian was already there, 2 coffees waiting on the table. Not his usual spot by the window, but a corner booth where they couldn't be easily seen. "You came," he said, something like relief in his voice. "I almost didn't." Elena slid into the booth, ignoring the coffee. "I spent all night researching you instead of sleeping." "What did you learn?" "That you graduated top of your class. That you've worked in the family business for 10 years. That every public record shows you're the perfect son." She leaned forward. "So either you're an incredibly patient liar, or you've been hiding who you really are for a very long time." "Both." Adrian's honesty surprised her. "I played the role my father wanted. Attended the meetings, signed the contracts, smiled for the cameras. But I've also been documenting everything, waiting for the right moment." "Why is now the right moment?" "Because of you." His blue eyes held hers. "I told you, I've been reading your work for months. You're fearless, Elena. You go after powerful people who think they're untouchable. When I learned you'd been assigned this investigation, I knew you wouldn't stop until you found the truth. I could either help you or watch you get hurt trying." Elena wanted to believe him. God, she wanted to believe him. But trust was earned, not given. "Tell me about the documents. Start with the Thornfield Properties connection." The truth unfolds. For 3 hours, Adrian walked her through the web of corruption his family had woven. Thornfield Properties was just one piece, a company secretly owned by the Morettis through shell corporations. They bought land rezoned through bribed city council members, Adrian explained, pulling up files on his own laptop. Then they built substandard housing, cut corners on safety, and charged premium prices. When tenants complained, they used connections in the housing authority to silence them. "The building collapsed last year," Elena whispered, remembering. 3 people died. My brother Luca approved the construction despite failed inspections." Adrian's jaw tightened. "He paid off the inspectors, falsified documents. Those deaths are on our family's hands." Elena felt sick. "You have proof?" "Emails, payment records, inspection reports with forged signatures." He met her eyes. "Enough to bring criminal charges, if you can get law enforcement to look past my father's political connections." "That's why you need the story published first," Elena realized. "Create public pressure they can't ignore." "Exactly." Adrian closed his laptop. "But Elena, you need to understand how dangerous this is. My family doesn't just buy politicians, they own judges, police chiefs, prosecutors. If they learn what we're doing." "We?" The word slipped out. "Yes, we." Something warm flickered in his expression. "You're not doing this alone anymore. Building trust through danger." Over the next 2 weeks, Elena and Adrian met almost daily. Sometimes at the cafe, sometimes in her cramped office after everyone else had gone home. He introduced her to former employees willing to testify, showed her how to trace money through the maze of shell companies, helped her understand the complex financial structures his father used to hide assets. And slowly, despite her caution, Elena began to trust him. It wasn't just the information he provided, though that was invaluable. It was the small things, how he brought her coffee when she worked late, how he remembered details about her life, how he looked at her like she was the most fascinating person he'd ever met. "Why did you become a journalist?" he asked one night as they worked through bank statements in her office. Elena looked up from her laptop. "My mother cleaned houses for rich families. She worked herself to exhaustion so I could go to college. I wanted to tell the stories of people like her, people who work hard and get stepped on by people like." She stopped, realizing what she was about to say. "People like my family," Adrian finished quietly. "It's okay. You're right. I'm sorry." "Don't be." He rolled his shoulders, tired. "I was raised in mansions while your mother cleaned them. I had every advantage while she struggled. The least I can do now is help expose how people like my father treat people like her." The honesty in his voice made Elena's chest ache. "You're not like them," she said softly. "I want to believe that." Adrian's eyes met hers across the cluttered desk. "But I've been complicit for years, Elena. I stood by while my father destroyed lives. I'm not innocent. You're trying to make it right now. Because of you." He stood, moved around the desk, stopped close enough that she could smell his cologne, something expensive but subtle. "You make me want to be better than I am." Elena's heart hammered. "Adrian. I know this is complicated. I know you're probably questioning my motives every second." His voice dropped lower. "But Elena, meeting you, working with you these past weeks, it's the most real thing I've experienced in my entire life." She should step back. Create distance. This was dangerous territory, mixing business with personal feelings. Instead, she stood, closing the space between them. "This is a terrible idea," she whispered. "The worst," he agreed. And then he kissed her. The attack that changed everything. It happened 3 nights later. Elena worked late at the office, alone in the building except for the night security guard. She'd just finished verifying a trail of bribes leading straight to Giovanni Moretti when she heard footsteps in the hallway. The office lights flickered off. Elena's blood ran cold. She grabbed her phone, but before she could dial, the door burst open. 2 figures in masks rushed in. "Give us the files," one growled. "I don't know what." The first man grabbed her, slamming her against the wall. Pain exploded through her shoulder. The second man went straight for her laptop. Elena fought back, screaming, kicking. The security alarm should have triggered. Where was the guard? Then she saw him through the doorway, slumped on the floor, unconscious or worse. "Last chance," the man holding her hissed. "Where are the backup files?" "There aren't any." He raised his fist. Elena closed her eyes, bracing for the blow. It never came. A crash. Shouting. The pressure on her throat released. Elena stumbled, gasping for air, as Adrian appeared like an avenging angel. He moved with brutal efficiency. One attacker went down with a sickening crunch, the other tried to run but Adrian caught him, slammed him into a desk. "Who sent you?" Adrian demanded, his voice deadly calm. The man didn't answer. Adrian's grip tightened. "Luca," the attacker gasped. "Your brother sent us." Said to scare her off the story. Adrian's face went pale. "My brother knows." The safe house. 20 minutes later, Elena sat in the passenger seat of Adrian's car, still shaking. He drove in silence, jaw clenched, checking the mirrors constantly. "Where are we going?" "Somewhere safe." He glanced at her. "Are you hurt?" "Bruised." "Scared." "Angry." Elena wrapped her arms around herself. The security guard. I called an ambulance before I came up. He's alive, just unconscious. Adrian's hands tightened on the steering wheel. I'm so sorry, Elena. I thought we had more time before they realized what we were doing. How did you know to come? I've had someone watching the building. When I got the alert that men entered after hours, I knew. He pulled onto a side street, then into an underground parking garage. We're here. Here was a luxury apartment building Elena had passed 100 times but never imagined entering. Adrian led her to a penthouse on the top floor, all floor-to-ceiling windows, modern furniture, and a view that took her breath away. This is your place? One of them. He moved through the space, checking locks, closing curtains. My father doesn't know about it. I bought it under a shell company 3 years ago. We'll be safe here. Elena walked to the window, looked out at the glittering city. Her reflection stared back, disheveled hair, frightened eyes, a bruise forming on her cheek. They could have killed me. I know. Adrian appeared behind her, his reflection joining hers in the glass. And it's my fault. I put you in danger. I chose this. Elena turned to face him. I chose to investigate your family. I chose to work with you. This isn't on you. Everything is on me. The anguish in his voice was raw. My family, my brother, the violence, it all traces back to choices I didn't make, stands I didn't take. And now you're paying the price. Elena reached up, touched his face. Then let's make sure it's worth it. Let's finish this story and bring them all down. The truth about his mother. They stayed up all night, working on her laptop at Adrian's dining table. Elena verified facts while Adrian filled in context, explaining the players and their motivations. As dawn broke, painting the sky pink and gold, Adrian finally told her the whole truth about his mother. Isabella Moretti was an art teacher, he began, his voice distant with memory. She loved beauty, believed in goodness. My father pursued her relentlessly, flowers, poetry, promises. She thought she was marrying a businessman building something legitimate. When did she learn the truth? Slowly, over years. The late-night meetings with men who looked dangerous. Money that appeared from nowhere. Friends who stopped calling. Adrian stood, moved to the window. By the time I was born, she knew what he was. But she was trapped, no money of her own, no family support, and a son she couldn't leave behind. Elena's heart broke for the woman she'd never met. She started documenting everything when I was 12, Adrian continued. Keeping journals, copying files, preparing to take it all to the authorities. She was so careful, so patient. It took her 3 years to build her case. What happened? My father discovered her plan before she could act. Adrian's reflection in the window looked haunted. He called in favors from psychiatrists he'd helped in the past. Had her declared delusional, paranoid, a danger to herself. The journals were dismissed as the ravings of a sick mind. Oh, Adrian. They put her in a private facility, expensive, exclusive, impossible to escape. I was 15. My father told me she'd had a breakdown, that she needed help. I believed him. His voice cracked. I believed him for 2 years before I understood what he'd really done. When did you see her again? Not until I was 21. By then, she was broken. The medications, the isolation, the gaslighting, it had destroyed who she was. Adrian turned to face Elena, tears on his cheeks. She didn't recognize me. Didn't know her own son. And 3 years later, she died alone in that place while my father attended a charity gala. Elena crossed to him, pulled him into her arms. He collapsed against her, all his carefully maintained control shattering. I'm so sorry, she whispered. He took everything from her, Adrian said against her shoulder. Her freedom, her mind, her life. And he did it with lawyers and doctors and money, all perfectly legal. That's when I started planning. That's when I decided that one day, somehow, I would make him pay. The plan takes shape. Over the next week, Elena and Adrian barely left the penthouse. They worked around the clock, building an airtight case. Elena wrote and rewrote her article, making every sentence bulletproof. Adrian contacted former associates, secured testimonies, gathered more evidence. They ordered takeout and ate at odd hours. They fell asleep on the couch, exhausted, only to wake tangled together and return immediately to work. And somewhere between the documents and the deadlines and the danger, something shifted between them. Elena would look up to find Adrian watching her with an expression that made her breath catch. He would brush her hair behind her ear with a tenderness that seemed impossible from someone raised in such a hard world. Late one night, as they reviewed contracts, Elena's hand covered his. "Thank you," she said simply. "For what?" "For trusting me. For taking this risk." She squeezed his fingers. "For being nothing like your family." Adrian turned his hand, lacing their fingers together. "I need to tell you something." Elena's heart raced. "What?" "When I first approached you in the cafe, it was calculated. Strategic. I'd decided you could be useful to my plan." He met her eyes. "But Elena, somewhere between the coffee and the conversations and the way you look when you're chasing a story, I fell in love with you." The words hung in the air between them, terrifying and true. "Adrian. You don't have to say anything. I know this is complicated. I know you probably think I'm manipulating you." His thumb stroked across her knuckles. "But I needed you to know. Before we publish this story and everything falls apart, I needed you to know that you're not just part of my revenge. You're everything." Elena's eyes burned with tears. Every instinct told her this was dangerous, that falling for him was the worst possible choice. But her heart didn't care about logic. "I love you too," she whispered. "And it terrifies me." Adrian pulled her close, pressed his forehead to hers. "It terrifies me too." The kiss that sealed their fate. They kissed like people who knew tomorrow might never come. Desperate and tender, fierce and gentle, everything they couldn't say in words. Adrian's hands framed her face like she was precious. Elena's fingers tangled in his hair, pulling him closer, closer, never close enough. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, the sun was rising again, another day survived, another day closer to the reckoning. "We publish in 2 days," Elena said, her voice shaky. "I know." Adrian traced her jaw with his thumb. "Are you ready?" "No." She laughed, the sound edged with hysteria. "But we're doing it anyway." "We're doing it anyway," he agreed. They returned to work, but everything felt different now. The air between them crackled with new energy. Every accidental touch sent sparks through Elena's skin. She was in love with Adrian Moretti. And in 2 days, they would destroy his entire world. The calm before the storm. The article was finished 24 hours before the deadline.